Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. Today, Israel on heightened alert in case of violence. The Jewish state prepared to defend itself against the possibility of terror attacks, with the Islamic holy month of Ramadan underway.
There are strong forces on various sides that are trying to escalate the situation and to bring about a real rupture in the fabric of life here.
We'll bring you a look at the tense situation in the Middle East. A vigil in Nashville, honoring the victims of the shooting at Covenant Christian School.
Just 2 days ago was our city's worst day. I so wish we did not need to be here.
We'll have a look at the timeline of the deadly attack that left 6 dead. Doctors quitting medicine. 300,000 doctors and other healthcare professionals left the medical profession in just 1 year.
Things have been spiraling in the last 2 to 4 years. Doctors hate medicine.
So why are they giving up? Is the answer found in Washington? China asserting its dominance in the Asian seas, putting local fishermen in the crosshairs of its aggressive tactics.
It's clear to us what China wants. They want to occupy the West Philippine Sea and the whole South China Sea.
We'll look at why neighboring countries are reluctant to openly challenge the Chinese on the high seas. And how a rescue dog is helping kids in an Ohio classroom learn about other countries. Those stories and more for you today on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin in the Middle East as Muslims across the region and around the world are marking their holy month of Ramadan. Israel remains on heightened alert against possible violence. Ahead of the Islamic fasting month, CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl visited an important military installation that serves as the eyes of Israel to the east and is also a significant biblical location.
This is Mount Ebal, known in the Bible as the Mountain of Cursing. It faces Mount Gerizim, the Mountain of Blessing. Both are mentioned by Moses in Deuteronomy chapter 11 as God prepares to bring the children of Israel into the promised land.
So the Mount of Blessing, full of houses. The Mount of Curse, completely empty. Nobody comes here.
Reserve Brigadier General Amir Avivi also points out the biblical connection goes back even further.
See in front of us a Jewish town called Elon Moreh, situated at the very place where Abraham, when he came into the land of Israel, after he left his home, this is the first place Abraham came to. So the first place mentioned in the Bible that has connection to the land of Israel is this very place that we are standing here.
Avivi says that's significant because the only thing on Mount Ebal is a military base with a view from the Mediterranean Sea to the country of Jordan.
It's only 70 kilometers. It's 45 miles. This is how small this country is, and when you sit on these mountains, you basically control everything.
He adds that without the base, Israel couldn't control its borders.
We are talking about air defense, we are talking about intelligence. This is how crucial this is for us.
This is where the technical means are located in order to enable Israel to have advance warning for any type of threat that may present itself at Israel coming from the east. So I'm talking about Jordan, Iraq, and even further than that.
Which leads to Iran, the country trying to wipe Israel off the map with nuclear ambitions and enriched uranium to near weapons grade.
The Iranians are bringing money to any group that is getting organized, like Lion's Den, for example. Even Lion's Den, that is not Hamas, it's not Islamic Jihad, and it's not Palestinian Authority, they got money from Iran.
Avivi says Iran's influence peddling also helps undermine and dismantle the Palestinian Authority.
There's a very weak and corrupt Palestinian Authority that isn't stopping that from happening. There are external factors, Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza and Iran, that are trying to influence the situation in Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem in order to bring about violence.
Avivi adds that Iran is thinking bigger than the Middle East by reaching into places like North Africa to pit Algeria against Morocco.
They want global domination. You know, we made peace with Morocco, for example, and Morocco signed with us an MOU, a military MOU, first military MOU in the Arab world. So when you talk to Morocco officials and you say, guys, why did you do peace with Israel? Why are you signing an MOU? The answer is Iran's involvement by weaponizing Polisario.
And according to Avivi, that global ambition is what would make a nuclear Iran much more dangerous than the world wants to believe. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Mount Ebal.
Here at home, where we're getting a clearer picture of the timeline in the mass shooting at the Covenant Christian School in Nashville. And new information is coming to light about the shooter as the community comes together to honor the victims. CBN's Jenna Browder has that story.
In Nashville, the community coming together to mourn the lives lost in the tragic school shooting. Singer Sheryl Crow, First Lady Jill Biden, and city leaders among those at Wednesday night's vigil.
I so wish we did not need to be here.
The victims, Evelyn Dickhouse, Hallie Scruggs, and William Kinney, all 9 years old. The Dickhouse family releasing this picture of Evelyn overnight, saying they're overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support. Also killed substitute teacher Cynthia Peak, custodian Mike Hill, and the school headmaster Catherine Kuntz. A former colleague of Kuntz's saying their last email exchange was about active shooter training in school. The memorial came as we're learning more about the timeline of the shooting.
Kids are all locked down.
Officers arriving 8 minutes after the first call came in. Going room by room, finding the shooter, 28-year-old Audrey Hale, on the second floor. Just 2 minutes after entering the school, the officers take down Hale. Authorities are still investigating the former student's motive. Nashville police say Hale's parents were shocked to learn she was hiding 7 guns in their home, including 3 used at the Covenant School. All were bought legally. They say Hale was under a doctor's care for an emotional disorder. Surveillance video shows Hale pulling up to the school, passing children playing outside, those students escaping to safety by running across the street into the nearby woods. Meanwhile, as the community continues to grieve, a message of faith and hope from Tennessee's governor.
There is hope in the midst of great tragedy because God is a redeemer. What is meant for evil can be turned for good. May we grieve in the days ahead, but not without hope.
Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Coming up, hundreds of thousands of doctors and other healthcare workers have quit their jobs and left the medical profession, and far more plan to leave in the next couple of years. But why? We'll take a look at that very important question when we come back. Welcome back to NewsWatch. Call it the Great Resignation. Doctors and other healthcare workers are leaving their jobs in droves. In 2021, more than 300,000 left the medical profession, and more than 1/3 were doctors. On this week's episode of The Global Lane, Dr. Stephen Soloway explains why nearly half of all American healthcare providers now say they'll quit by 2025.
Things have been spiraling in the last 2 to 4 years. I can't explain the 2 to 4 year escalation. However, I can tell you at this point in time, doctors hate medicine. It used to be so enjoyable. You'd learn, you'd have relationships with patients, you'd get them better, or you would try to. You'd rely on your colleagues for advice. Everything was nirvana. It was perfect. Right now, Medicare has cut physician fees for office visits, for 17 years in a row, while expenses go up. The government, by pushing their woke agenda, is incentivizing staff that don't make a lot of money to sit home and collect and not work. So when my office and the hospital and the other hospital and the other hospital have thousands and thousands of unfilled jobs for medical assistants, for clerical work, for record takers, for all of the jobs that are not directly related to medicine, we have a big shortage. While we're dealing with the shortage, we're noticing that the government is coming into our practice at night on the computer that they mandated 15 years ago with the Obamacare. And we are being criminalized just like the Department of Justice is a criminal weapon used by the left. The medical establishment has become a criminal wing to investigate people that are working too much because, God forbid, you should do a good job efficiently. You're not considered to be a helper. You're considered to be a threat to the government, as all conservatives are a threat to the government, and all self-employed people are a threat to the government. And for this reason, I can't speak for every doctor, but one thing beautiful about medicine is the autonomy. Well, the autonomy is gone. And without autonomy and freedom and the ability to think outside the box, why would you want to go into a profession which you're supposed to think outside the box to come up with answers to unanswerable questions? You know, we're not dealing with math questions where 2 + 2 is 4. We're dealing with somebody with a headache, rash, and a fever and joint pain, and we have to sift through data, which we have to order the right data. And if we don't have somebody to input the data, the test won't get done. If the person at the lab isn't there to draw the blood because they hate their job and they were given $1,000 by the government to stay home, then we're not going to get the test. If the MRI tech doesn't want to work because they don't like their salary, well, you're not going to get the MRI. And by the way, if you do get these tests approved, you're going to find out that the insurance company puts up a firewall and it's not approved. It's not approved because they don't want to pay for it.
What can the average person do about all this then?
The only thing that anyone can do about this is there has to be almost a revolution. And it's a two-phased attack here. One is you got to educate yourself and you got to advocate for yourself. You need to know the CEO of the hospital. You need to know the nursing manager. You need to know the congressman. And when you have problems, you really have to speak up, because if you're in the right, they can't deny you. And the people don't understand that these companies don't have the right, and the government does not have the right to deny you any reasonable care, whether it is a test or a medication. And changing drugs for the benefit of their financial bottom line and the shareholders in the company, this is all a bunch of bull. So that's one thing. The second thing is that doctors have to be a little bit united in the sense that, and I see this happening now, doctors are not accepting Medicare patients. They're not accepting Medicare assignment. So the patient has to pay the $500 up front. Then they submit the bill to Medicare and they get back to $17, and they see why the doctor didn't want to deal with it. So doctors need to take less insurance. They need to take less orders from anybody. And at the same time, the patient needs to be educated and know who to fight for. Who to yell to fight for them. Because the doctor, I cannot fight for 20 people a day by myself, nor am I going to be able to pay for literally a multidisciplinary team to do the fighting for me. Now, that's what needs to be done. So the only way it can be done in a cost-effective manner is me see less insurances and me fight more and educate my patients more. That's what can be done.
Okay, the book is Medical Politics: How to Protect Yourself from Bad Doctors, Insurance Companies, and Big Government. Dr. Stephen Soloway, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
I loved it. Thank you so much. I can't wait to come to Virginia Beach.
Also tonight on the Global Lane, why the possible indictment of Donald Trump may have hit a dead end. And China and Russia are strengthening their alliance. Is a big war coming? You can see this on the Global Lane tonight on the CBN News Channel at 8:30 Eastern, or on the CBN News app and on YouTube. Still ahead, bump them, ram them, sink them, and then leave them. That's what China's maritime militia is doing to Philippine fishermen. We'll show you how the Asia superpower is aggressively trying to dominate the South China Sea right after this. Thanks for staying with us. China is continuing to assert its dominance in the South China Sea. Over the last 10 years, Beijing has deployed significant military assets to intimidate any country challenging its key international shipping lane. Fishermen whose livelihoods depend on this waterway are in the crosshairs of China's aggressive tactics. George Thomas traveled to the coast of Manila to show us their struggle firsthand.
Spend any amount of time with J.C. Cabanillas on the water, and you'll soon discover what puts a smile on his face.
I feel the happiest when I'm at sea. This is the kind of job where you don't have a boss. It's based on your decision whether you'll go to sea or not.
3 generations of Cabanillas' family have fished these waters here off the Philippine coast. That livelihood now faces an increasing threat from China.
Every time Filipino fishermen go to the West Philippine Sea, they will be greeted by Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese fishermen. No matter how far they are, they will be reminded that you have entered Chinese territory, so you have to leave.
Fernando Haicap runs the nation's largest fishing federation, some 80,000 members. He says that China's claim to South China Sea, including the West Philippine Sea, puts fishermen like Cabanillas on the front lines of a possible military confrontation with Beijing.
Before the occupation of the Chinese government in the West Philippine Sea and larger South China Sea, area used to be a fishing ground for all fishermen from different countries: Malaysians, Indonesians, Vietnamese, Taiwanese, and Chinese. During that time, there were no stories of fights or rivalry between the fishermen. But now, the Chinese presence is so destructive.
The Philippine government warned world leaders at the recent Munich Security Conference that China's harassment of Filipino fishermen and the country's Coast Guard is now a daily occurrence.
It's clear to us what China wants. They want to occupy the West Philippine Sea and the whole South China Sea.
A Chinese Coast Guard ship hit a Philippine Coast Guard vessel last month with a military-grade laser, temporarily blinding some of the crew aboard the Philippine vessel. Several Filipino fishermen were also targeted and forced to move away from the area. The Philippine government lodged more than 200 protests against Chinese intimidation and harassment in 2022 alone.
JC here has been fishing these waters off the coast of the Philippines for more than 35 years. And today, so many of his colleagues who fish these same waters are urging the Filipino government to do more to challenge the Chinese.
To avoid direct military confrontation and still maintain a high level of intimidation, the Chinese government has deployed a maritime militia, mostly made up of commercial Chinese fishermen, to prowl these waters.
They are trained by the PLA Navy, and their wages are funded by the PLA Navy.
Retired Navy Captain Carl Schuster, a former director of operations at the U.S. Pacific Command's Joint Intelligence Center, says the militia has hundreds of commercial boats and thousands of crew members at their disposal.
The advantage of using the maritime militia is ostensibly they are commercial craft. If you check the ownership papers, they go back to a commercial entity somewhere, and that gives the Chinese government plausible deniability.
In 2021, more than 200 Chinese fishing boats converged on the Whitsun Reef, an area under Philippine control in the South China Sea.
Their basic tactics is to intimidate local fishermen into leaving the area so that China gains control of the waters by default.
The militia, dubbed as China's Little Blue Men because of the blue-painted color of their vessels, are trained to carry out offensive maneuvers, especially around disputed territories.
It's called gray zone operations. They stop short of committing an act of war, but they will use their water cannon on local fishing boats. They'll bump them, ram them, sink them, and then leave them.
Experts say China's hybrid warfare here is similar to how Moscow deployed its Russian Little Green Men to infiltrate and take over Crimea in 2014.
And in theory, they could do even more than that. If they ever wanted to launch an attack, they could even use some fishing boats clandestinely or surreptitiously to carry weapons or carry soldiers.
It's one big reason why the Philippines and neighboring countries are reluctant to openly challenge the Chinese on the high seas.
When they come up on one of these craft violating local rules, are they approaching a purely commercial craft or are they approaching an armed ship? Nations, particularly in Southeast Asia, where China is much more powerful than they are, they're very wary of interfering with any Chinese commercial fishing activity for fear of what they might actually be encountering.
Back on his boat, J.C. Cabanillas is thrilled that the United States and the Philippines are strengthening their military ties. Both countries are set to resume joint patrols of the South China Sea.
We Filipinos need to stay strong as well, so that the Chinese will see we're not scared of them. The more we look intimidated, the more they want to occupy us.
George Thomas, CBN News, Manila.
Coming up, meet the dog who actually helps kids do their homework. We'll show you how he does it when we come back. Stay with us. You've probably heard the excuse, my dog ate my homework. But for some elementary school students, one dog is actually helping kids do their homework. Meet Roy. He was rescued after being abandoned on the side of the road in Mexico. Now he visits classrooms in Toledo, Ohio, dressing up and helping to teach kids about different countries and also about perseverance.
It shows kids that they can overcome obstacles. You know, just because there's a bump in the road doesn't mean you stop. You keep going. There's always something better ahead. You just have to keep pushing through.
Roy was a leprechaun there in that video. Once he visits a class, the students tap into their creative side to write stories on the country he helps them learn about. And that's going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.